What makes a Jentai actually good? Well, I can tell you it comes down to maybe 2 to 3 things, which is the art style, the concept of it, and the gimmick that is sort of playing in both of those areas. But when it comes down to things, I feel like if you're gonna look at some Jentai material and essentially have a good time with what you're looking at, it better be worth my damn time, honestly. Like, it feels like when I'm watching Jentai, I have to watch it like it's an anime. I had to pick out something that looks appealing to me and something that I'm necessarily gonna vibe with as I'm kind of doing the thing. Some Jentai honestly have both concepts nailed down in the bag. Other times you have Jentai where they have one of those concepts really good and done rightly, and then you also have those ones where it's just like in a genre you never would like, but then also it kind of hits well because maybe the art style is good, or the concept is actually really decent, or the gimmick is actually pretty interesting. And those are the types of things that make Jentai kind of great, and anime in general just kind of great too, because you can kind of follow those rules in the anime as well. But we're mainly also focusing on the Jentai material of it. Now, while this video is definitely not a list, this does show, I do want to show off some shows that really does be slapping, whether it's coming through their concept or art style or gimmick, and no matter where it comes from or how it looks or how it feels to watch it, it be slapping on certain areas. Dropout is obviously one of those shows where the art style is good and the gimmick is good and the concept is good. All of it is really damn good. Obviously I like the first episode because it was just slapping hard as hell. Like, the whole concept of the show is essentially, you know, the students is not necessarily doing well in Japan, so to raise some actual graduation rates and have students be doing well, basically the female students come through, be smashing the dudes and basically raising, you know, them up to be actual graduates. And, you know, depending on your standard, you get a girl or maybe you don't get a girl, but still, regardless, even if you don't get a girl, congratulations, you get a public on the whole to basically clap cheeks in. I just really like the art style of this show. The concept is still good. I don't necessarily hate it. It's, you know, all across the board I like the show and series, but definitely the art style is what speaks to me the most. And when it comes down to things, I do like the main girl in the first episode, just because she's like, you know what, I'm actually pretty smart, however, I like to dick too much, so I'm just gonna stay in this position. So even when someone try to, and the thing is, she likes it so much, and specifically with a certain person, to the point where she would even go as far as to judo flip one of the other dudes that's trying to take her away from him, and essentially harm the other guy that's basically clapping the finest chick, and essentially just like, you know what, I'm gonna judo flip your ass and then I'm gonna spread my ass cheeks for this man because he needs this ass cheek clapping right now. So that's literally how it is. Now don't get me wrong, there was that one weird scene where somehow the man's dick ended up pulling out her vagina from the inside out, which is weird, but overall, I still would say I did enjoy the experience. I will say that much. I don't know what it is about the specific type of maybe clothing or uniform that the girls were wearing in the show that made it appealing, but I'm not necessarily gonna lie, that whole ass collar and dog tag that I was wearing, plus seeing some boobs going with it, it be slapping sometimes. I'm not gonna hold you. There's plenty of shows where the gimmick is slapping or the concept is slapping and the story is all slapping all together. You know, there's plenty of shows where they just slap all together and you don't have to worry about anything. But what about actually looking at it from a detailed perspective? You know, maybe one of the shows are actually slapping with, you know, maybe just one of the concepts, or maybe one of the art styles or something like that, you know? And you do have those shows too. Like, but what if the show was actually like in a genre that you do not like NTR or Ugly Bastard or something of the sort? And you do again have the shows, and I'm gonna go ahead and give you one example of a show that I think looks very different and unique, and also that will help it make it interesting, but at the very same time I do not like the gimmick of it because it's part of the fat bastard type of thing, which is Seiko First Time Virgin Lost Wording. I don't necessarily know the exact word of the title because it doesn't really translate well, but when it comes down to things, this one looks very different. Like, this one looks like it actually uses a slight bit of realism, but also has a, you know, obviously like not so realistic type of vibe to it, I guess, in a weird way. Like, this one just looks super interesting, and I can't necessarily tell you why I think it looks this interesting. I don't know, it's just something that you just don't see in Jentai material. You just don't see this type of art style, honestly, and that will make it kind of dope, maybe. while granted, again, obviously I don't necessarily like the ugly bastard gimmick of it, still nonetheless, I do like the fact that it's different, because I haven't really seen many Jentai that pulls off something like this, or, you know, pulls off a different art style in a way that it completely changes what Jentai can look like in some shape or form. And I'm surprised that this Jentai wasn't honestly really taught a lot, which is kind of crazy. Granted, it does have ugly bastard in it, so I'm not too surprised, and the bastards do be ugly as shit. But when it comes down to things, this one is like one of those shows that's super interesting to look at because of the art style by itself, and the art style makes me forget about all the bad parts of the show that, you know, or at least maybe forgive the parts of the show at least, you know, instead of focusing and hyper focusing on it. So this is like one of those shows I can actually just kind of just watch. I don't necessarily fully intent on, you know, watching more art styles like this, but still nonetheless, it's pretty damn good for what it is. And sometimes when it comes to shows, you do have gimmicks in those shows, which basically are like your genres or your tropes and stuff like that, where certain things happen in a certain show, and, you know, not every single show needs to have it. You know, maybe certain shows have a gimmick where, you know, the entire population of people just do something normal that doesn't really seem normal to us, like Pollinate Girls Attack, or Odioke Land, which is literally just adult Disney theme park where you're essentially just smashing ass and clapping cheeks and spanking ass, where, you know, that's just like a natural thing of what you're doing. Honestly, it's fine, it doesn't necessarily matter, and would sign the hell up immediately. Or my personal favorite Jentai, Zettai Junshu, which is essentially just the population of Japan is just dying and it's not necessarily going well, so the government issues people, mainly males, licenses to essentially have smashing sessions with people just to raise the population up. Anytime they flash that license, they immediately gets put into a scenario and essentially have to complete the full intercourse session and getting pregnant, just so again they can raise that population, which again is by far one of my favorite Jentais that I've really ever seen. Honestly, it's definitely within the top 5, and when it comes down to it, it even uses a gimmick I don't necessarily like, trains, and actually make it make sense, because in one of the episodes, essentially you have the whole red-haired girl that, you know, in the train just wearing a trench coat, flashes her titties and everything out, they start banging, but guess what, they didn't act like the whole thing was invisible. They didn't act like the whole smashing thing was invisible with the people on board. No, everybody on that train ended up clapping some ass, so I can appreciate that, unlike shows where they actually do show that and they just have that invisible, you know, barrier of you can't see the person that's getting clapped or anything like that, or you don't really sense anything is wrong or something of the sort on that sort of way. You know, like, that's some things I just do not necessarily like, do not approve of, and I absolutely hate when it comes to Jentai. There's only one show where, again, the trope of it happens and I don't necessarily like it, but it does show a good art style, so I can somewhat forgive it, honestly, and that's this show right here. This thick ass chick, this thick ass teacher lady, is actually pretty damn sexy and fine. You know, it's a part of the ugly bastard gimmick, and, you know, it's a part of the train smashing session, but she's so fun that I will let it slide. I'm not gonna hold you. And there is plenty of shows that just exist out there that has horrible ass gimmicks or horrible ass looking characters, but it does have a very nice ass lady, and then, you know, you can actually do something with that. You know, like, I think there was like a thick ass chick in one NCR Jentai that actually looked sexy as hell. Then you also had like that one Jentai where the Shota was banging a teacher, which, you know, the Shota was ugly as shit, but the teacher was sexy as hell. Why not? It just goes to show that even the most weirdest and maybe the most not so greatest Jentai can still work in some shape and form by just saving it with a good concept or a good art style, and that's really all you kind of need. I would say a show that actually has a decent art style but not really anything interesting but a really good concept will be Toshi Densetsu. I love this show because mainly it doesn't be afraid to do what it wants to do, and also it also uses Japanese folklore creatures and monsters and stuff like that as well, like Hashaku and like Hanako of the Toilet, which is really damn good and crazy on the first damn episode, but still, nonetheless, I would clap Hanako as well in her ghost form, wouldn't mind. But when it comes down to things, you know, you can use a, you know, a trashy, well, not a trash art style, but basically you're like your decent average art style and give it a decent concept, and, you know, it can still work out. You know, even the own standalone Hashaku Jentai that exists out there that has an actual decent art style and has a decent concept. And that's like a fine one too, you know? Like, I would clap Hashaku in that damn show. Granted, she might actually murder me in that one, but still, regardless, I would clap. It is what it is. And if we're going to compare Hashaku's, I'm going to get the one from Toshi Densetsu more faster than I would get the one from the other standalone one, mainly because the stories differentiate a little bit. One was just basically getting banged by shotas all the time, and essentially when no one was actually taking on some, you know, taking her to see some shota people, because, you know, that's how they kind of pass off as manhood. You know, she basically just started roaming the streets, and essentially that's when she starts, you know, going after shota people. But then another one, essentially you just getting, you know, haunted by this one chick who just will never leave you, essentially, and that just very more horrifying. So I would take the Toshi Densetsu Hashaku more than I would ever take, you know, the original one, the other one. But point is, when it comes down to this entire video, there is tons of fascinating, good looking Jentai, or interesting concept of Jentai, or even using certain gimmicks of Jentai that actually, you know, maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, but still can be good. I mean, I know a lot of people don't necessarily like Time Asagi with the whole flashing seizure looking ass lights, but I actually don't mind it because it's just like the intensity of the scene and the wacky ass camera that keep moving all over the place. I actually don't mind that, honestly. And that's just something personally for me. But it might not necessarily be for something, it won't probably be good for other people. But you know what? That's fine. You can find something else that is equally superior, and that's okay. Again, Jentai is like that land of type of place where you can just experiment with what you have, what you want to do, and just do it. And essentially have fun doing it, honestly. And that's one thing I can say I can thoroughly enjoy about Jentai. And then there's definitely no rules about what you can't show and what you can show, and it's perfectly fine, it's natural, and it's, you know, whatever. But overall, again, when it comes down to everything, the art style, the concept of it, and maybe the gimmick is mainly what makes Jentai good. And hopefully that answers the question of the video that I'm trying to have here. But anyway, that's essentially all I really want to talk about for this one. So hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out. Also follow me on socials. And if you'd like to donate to the channel, Patreon is available as well. And until then, it's boy Jay, signing off. Have a blessed day.